Number 7.
Let me give you some background on the situation. My name is John. I'm 16 at the time of this event, in the middle of my junior year. I'm from Asian descent and am nearsighted, which means I can't see far away, which is like a couple of inches away from my face. It all started when I was in my homeroom. My teacher's name was Mrs. H. Now, Mrs. H was a young woman in her 30s, but looked much older than she was. She taught history and I had her every second period. First period just ended and I'm just getting into class. As I walk over to my seat, I see a skinny, black-haired kid sitting there. "Are you the new kid?" I asked. "Yeah, name's Kyle." "Cool, my name's John. I don't want to seem rude, but you're in my seat. Could you please move?" He gave me this face that a child makes when you don't give them what they want. He got up and sat in the seat behind me. He reeked of someone who hadn't had a shower in a while. I take my seat and class begins. Mrs. H explains that there is a project we have to do, and it's on famous landmarks and their purpose. This was a partnered project, and, lucky me, I was paired with Kyle. I thought to myself, not only was this going to give me a bad grade, but it meant that he had to come over to my house, or I had to go over to his. Obviously, I didn't want some random person to just come over to my house, nor did I wish to go anywhere for that matter. So I made a stupid decision and decided to give Kyle my number. Everything was alright for the first couple of days. Nothing was creepy besides from the look he gave me a few days ago. Except this afternoon, we had just finished some writing. We had both done 2 pages each and were going to pick out the highlights from both of them and combine them together. This was a couple of hours ago. My parents were out at dinner and I was home alone playing some computer games when I heard what sounded like glass shattering from the basement, which was odd because I was on the 2nd floor. Being the coward I am, I decided to pause my game and listen. Not sure what to expect, I sat listening for a good 5 minutes before resuming my game. Another minute goes by and I can hear the door to the basement open. I don't have any pets besides from a cat which was on my bed at the time. I mute my computer and turn off the monitor, grabbing my phone to dial 911. This was a landline installed into my room, which was my dad's office for quite some time. I quickly told the operator the situation and she had dispatched an officer. I hear very quiet footsteps coming up the stairs. It felt like forever, but in reality it was roughly 3 minutes before I hear sirens. I never felt so relieved in my life. That was until my door slammed open. I couldn't see much, but only a mere silhouette of a figure. The sirens passed my window with enough light for me to see the face of Kyle. He doesn't notice me, but hides in the closet parallel to me. I have never been so scared in my entire fucking life. His facial expression was the same from when I had told him to move out of my seat. It's roughly 30 seconds of utter darkness besides some streetlights glaring in through the window. The door slams open and a cop rushes in, turns on the light and asks me if I'm okay. I scream my fucking lungs out, trying to explain that he's in the closet while sobbing. He opens the closet and gets attacked immediately, but luckily he has enough time to tase Kyle. I asked the cops why they arrived so fast on only suspicion, and he told me that the operator said she heard another phone click after I hung up. I handed in the project a week later because I took some time off from school and stayed at my grandparents' house. I got an A.
Number 6.
This story happened last year when I was 17, so I'll briefly explain my situation at the time. I went to a quite well-known private school in Australia. I was a reasonably popular guy and played sport at quite a high level. One of my closest friends is called Sam. Sam was one of the most well-known guys in our city among people our age. He was very good looking, tall, very good at sport. Basically, he could have any girl he wanted. Most guys also liked him because he was a pretty genuine guy. Sam's 18th birthday was soon and we had just finished an important set of exams. We decided to go out to the city to celebrate. Legal age is 18, but we used fake IDs. Sam, another friend called Tim, and I went together at 10 p.m. on Saturday night. Tim drove and stayed sober so he could drive both of us home later. Anyway, we were in a pretty big club and we were at a bar having some drinks and chatting to some friends we ran into. Sam's ex-girlfriend and her new boy, all on good terms. I saw the girl I liked at the time, so I went to go dance with her, leaving Sam and Tim at the bar. By this time, we'd probably had about 5 or so drinks each. After 20 minutes or so, I walked back over to Sam to see what he was up to. When I got over to him, he was visibly drunk and Tim wasn't there anymore. Sam was slurring his words, laughing, slouching over the bar. This was really unusual because Sam was a big guy and usually handled alcohol pretty well. I thought he might have done some stupid shit while I was gone, but when I asked him, he said he hadn't had much more alcohol. As I was talking to him, he was becoming more and more sloppy. Eventually he was really sick and I took him to the bathroom to vomit. I was pretty worried at this point because he was struggling to walk by himself and talking nonsense. Afterwards, I took him back out and tried to find Tim to drive him home. As I was helping him through the dance floor, a girl came up to us and started acting all concerned about Sam. I didn't know her. She looked a few years older, tall and skinny. She told me that she was a family friend of Sam and she could take him home. Sam seemed to at least know who she was, and when I asked if he was alright to go home with her, he said yes. At this point, I was a bit tipsy myself and I didn't have any reason to think that she was lying, so I just said goodbye and went back to dancing. Later on, I saw Tim again, and when he asked where Sam was, I told him what happened. He thought it was pretty weird and decided to call Sam to make sure he got home safe. When he called, Sam picked up and said hello, but then there were a few seconds of static and the call was ended. At this point, we thought something weird was going on and tried calling him a few more times. About 10 minutes later, Tim got a text. I'm not sure what it's called, but Sam had sent his location on Apple Maps. Then he got another text saying to come pick him up. We ran to Tim's car and drove to the address as quick as we could. It was only 10 minutes away. When we got there, Sam stumbled out onto the street. We helped him into the car and drove the fuck out of there. After he's had some time to sober up a bit, Sam manages to tell us what happened. He says that all of a sudden in the club he felt really out of it and sick, even though he hadn't had much to drink, and that his memory was patchy since then. When the girl came up to us, Sam didn't understand what was going on and thought that she was my friend who'd I'd asked to drive him home, even though she told me that he was his family friend. The girl took him back to her house and deadlocked the door so he couldn't leave. When she saw that Tim was calling, she took his phone away. Sam said his head cleared a few minutes later and he sobered up for a minute. He realized how fucked up the situation was and grabbed his phone off of the girl. He turned it on and tried to get us to come pick him up. He asked the girl what address they were at, but she wouldn't say, so he sent his location. When we texted him to say that we were at the front, he just said, "My friends are here, I need to go now." She must have realized what had happened and that if we came inside and saw what was going on, she could be in some big strife. So basically our theory is that this girl drugged and tried to take advantage of Sam. There are some parts we still don't understand though. Why would she take him back to her own house, then so easily let him leave? I mean, now we know where she lives. Who was she? We had never seen her before and have never seen her since. Why didn't she try anything sexual with Sam while he was at her house? He said that she just left him alone, sitting on a couch before he got the phone call. How did she drug him? The time she had come up to us as we were walking through the dance floor was the first time anyone saw her all night. Why would she even kidnap him at all? She was an older, pretty attractive girl from what we could see. Sam would have probably gone back to her house and had sex with her willingly without her having to do anything strange. We decided not to report it to the police for a number of reasons. We would effectively be shooting ourselves in the foot because we were also doing illegal things at the time. Underage drinking, using fake IDs, etc. Our school often punished students if it found out about them doing things like this on the weekend. And if the police got involved, our school would definitely find out. Drinking was frowned upon by almost all of our sports coaches, so it could have had some consequences for our places in higher level teams. Also, Sam found the whole experience pretty scary and embarrassing. so he didn't want many people other than close friends to know about it. Sam and I still talk about that night often, trying to work out a proper explanation for what happened. Neither of us have ever gone back to the house, even though we know where it is. Maybe one day we'll knock on the door.
Number 5.
People will warn you about doing business or meeting people on Craigslist. Hell, even dating sites, places of hope and love, get poisoned by demented people. It seems like anywhere you go, whether it be reality or the virtual world, something disturbing can be lurking, waiting. The following story does not involve any of the aforementioned scenarios, but instead even more gut-wrenching, from a job search straight out of college. I have never told anyone this story, only my girlfriend, and that's because she inadvertently got involved. When I was in college, I spent most of my time partying and pissing away a great opportunity. Fortunately enough for me, I was able to buckle down in time and get my grades where they needed to be. Was I top of my class? Absolutely not. But hey, a degree is still a degree on a resume, right? I went to school for biology. Just something about the process of life simply amazes me, especially plant life. Needless to say, once I graduated, I was ready to make some money. Referring back to my party days, I had gotten a DUI in my freshman year of college. My school always tried their best to get students jobs right out of school, but that DUI really held me back from a lot of opportunities. Having no luck through my school, I had to find other avenues. After all, my loans were going to be coming in 5 months later. I used multiple search engines and job boards to help find interviews. After months and months of searching, pre- and post-graduation, I finally found a posting that I absolutely knew I was qualified for. The posting was on Indeed, and the company was looking for an entry-level intern right out of school. I would be taking seeds and cuttings of plants, mainly vegetables, and getting thousands ready for mass production and harvest. It's crazy how much hindsight can be 20/20 sometimes. Looking back, I should have been more attentive. The company had a name of just a couple of letters, followed by an LLC, but I was just grateful somebody had considered me at all. When I spoke to the man on the phone, he seemed rushed and hurried. His only concern was when I could meet up with him for the interview. Having thought that he was just in a hurry to fill the position, I naively told him I'm available any time and any day. He gave me the address and asked if I could come the next day. I told him I would see him then. The next morning, after I had gotten all ready, I went on Google Maps to find the place. Having a few minutes to spare, I switched my iPhone from maps to satellite, and all I could see was dirt fields. My first thought was maybe the image was captured during a cold month when nothing was outgrowing. But just by looking at it, I could tell that they were not the proper conditions or geographical locations for your typical farm or agricultural site. But ignorant to the facts, I went anyway. I arrived 20 minutes early. My parents always emphasized being punctual, and thank God I did. When I pulled up, I shut off my car and lit up one last cigarette to take off the pressure for the interview. As I'm sitting there, I take in my surroundings and see that there really isn't any building for any companies to be in, and the only things inside are a shitty Texas Chainsaw Massacre looking house, and a house-sized greenhouse that presumably hasn't been used in 10 years. I remember the greenhouse being really dirty. In fact, I joked about it looking like Life After People. You know, the show on what life is like after humans are gone. Once I got my focus off of the greenhouse, I looked back towards the house, and I see the white-brown stained curtains moving ever so slightly. This is where it gets scary. I keep staring at the window, and after a second, in the bottom left-hand corner, I can make out about 1/3 of a face and a single blue eyeball. My legs instantly turn to jello, and I know something just isn't on the up and up. With my heart pounding and my brain racing, I feel my phone vibrate. It's a text, not a call, but a text from that same number. "You coming in?" the text said. "Be right there," I responded, just not to cause any alarm. By this point, I knew I needed to leave, immediately. I go to flick my cigarette out of the window, and in my side mirror, I can see someone hiding around the backside of my car. He had a knife in his hands, but he seemed like he was going for my tires and not me. I go to put my car in drive, but I accidentally put it in neutral and I roll back about 2 feet. I'm pretty sure I rolled over his foot or ankle. I had to pull a U-turn to get back to the one-way entrance, but as I'm pulling away, all I can hear is,
"Johnny, my ankle, fuck!"
over and over again until it fades away. Keep in mind, these people have my phone number and address from the resume I submitted on Indeed. My first thought was to call the police, but there was no way I could do that. In the midst of my job struggles, I decided I would do whatever it took to succeed. I put my botany to use and just started growing marijuana for some money. So needless to say, I wasn't going to jail for something I haven't even made money off of yet. So I took my chances. I stayed at home in front of the window, just waiting for days and days, but nothing. Probably 2 weeks into the encounter, I got a text. I was positive it was the same number, but I checked my call log just to confirm, and it was.
"Since you didn't want to come in, can I come in?"
My heart stopped. He just couldn't let it go, could he? Now him and his partner or friend decided paying me a visit would be fun for them. My eyes immediately started tearing up like an instinctive trait, and I just wanted to buckle. But I couldn't let my actions put my girlfriend in this situation. I came clean and told her what was going on and everything that had happened. I could see an old maroon car parked in the back alley where it leads to my back fence. There is a lot of gang and drug activity going on back there, so most people know not to be out there at night. But from where I am, I can't see anything else, just the orange glow from the streetlight illuminating his rusty car. Occasionally I can see the ember brighten on whatever he's smoking. He stayed there for hours. At about 2:30 a.m, the local bars let out and it's a popular path for people needing that extra bump in the night. I see 4 guys walking his way, and they clearly know that he doesn't belong. Before approaching, they all stop for a second, almost as if they were discussing or planning something. One guy walks up to his window and starts talking. Next thing I know, one of the other guys throws something through the passenger side window, and the man at his window starts punching him. They yank the man out of his car and just start beating him mercilessly. The man's car rolls forward into a public trash bin and is being slowly pushed through my neighbor's fence. After stealing the man's car, one guy throws one last thing at him as they drive off. I watched the man hobble off in pain and shame, and he disappeared down the alley and into the night. 2 weeks after that, we decided to move. I won't say how long it's been, but I currently have a job now, and I'm so happy I never have to use Indeed again.
Number 4.
To preface this, I want to say last year I spent about 32 days in the woods, either scouting, hunting, or fishing. The year before that, I spent about 22 days. This doesn't include my regular hunts and camping adventures, which in the past 3 years adds up to just over 100 days. I've been hunting since I was 9 and have spent a lot of time outdoors in various parts of the US and in Canada. I've seen a lot of strange shit, but this one takes the cake. I was in the Cayuta, North Georgia wilderness for 7 days scouting for bears, wild hogs and deer, prepping for a hunting trip later that year. I had hiked in about 10 miles and then went off trail for another 3 or 5. Basically, I was out in the middle of nowhere. Since I was alone, I was using a hammock that had a built-in bug net, and I had a rain fly over it. I spent about 3 days halfway up a mountain just looking for a good place to hunt. I saw about 3 or 4 good-sized bears, about 10 hogs, and came across some good-sized deer. On the 4th day, I was going to head back down a small stream that I had marked on my GPS and then set up camp, restock on water, and prep for the 2-day hike back. As I was approaching this small stream, I noticed a tent which I was excited to see, as I had been completely alone for a few days, and it was always nice to run into another hiker. As I got closer to the tent, I noticed that there was a small pack on the ground just outside of it. I figured the person couldn't have been too far from where the camp was, so I set up my camp about 30 yards away, and with about 4 hours of daylight left, I started cooking some dinner. 2 hours later, I was starting to wonder where this person was. Given that I was in the wilderness and it was a 1+ day hike out, there wasn't much I could do. But I did hike around the site, making a circle as I went out to look for any signs of struggle, or maybe they had an injury. I got about a 1/4 mile from the campsite, walking a circle, but I didn't find anything. As night came, no one showed. I started a fire in hopes that the person would be able to find where they set up and have some light. Fires burn really bright and are very easy to see from far away. After eating, searching, and hoping that the person was going to make it back, I called it a night. I had a small flask with me and took a couple of sips of whiskey, jumped into my hammock with my pistol, and attempted to get to sleep. I sleep pretty hard, really hard, regardless of where I am. It literally annoys my friends because I can always seem to fall asleep and stay asleep, regardless of where I am in the world. But this night was different. I felt like something was off, but I figured it was just me worrying about this person, who, by all my accounts, was completely missing. So, for the first time in my life, I woke up to the sound of what I thought was footsteps. But not in the sense of footsteps on leaves, but what a heavy-footed person would make walking on an old wood floor. It was extremely loud. I got my gun, grabbed my headlamp, stalled in a small compartment above me, and waited to see if it would stop. And, right at that moment, it did. Then I saw something that scared the shit out of me on my rainfly. The gleam of a flashlight, faint but there. And right when I did, it sounded like 10 people suddenly running away from me in every direction. I dropped out of my hammock onto the ground, frantically turning on my headlamp, shining it all around me, but didn't see shit. My heart was racing pretty bad, but I thought it might have just been the reflection of the moon on the rainfly. Yeah, that's what it was. And those footsteps running away from me was probably armadillos or something, even though their eyes shine, and they're pretty easy to spot. Problem was, there was no moon. I'd never seen an armadillo that tall either. And for some reason, the campsite I was set up by was gone. The fire had been put out by water. It was apparent because there was not a damn coal in the thing. I thought for sure that it was about 4 a.m, but I had only been asleep for about an hour. At this point, I wanted to leave, but hiking out in the wilderness while it's dark is always a bad idea. So I grabbed my flask, took a swig of whiskey, removed my rainfly so I could see out of my hammock and around the area I was in, and tried my hardest to go back to sleep. I was laying down when I saw some light hit the trees above me. It was clear that it was coming from downstream, and I got out of my hammock and started yelling, "Hey, y'all need any help?" No response. I saw whatever it was putting out the light, and it spun around and started heading downstream really fast. At this point, my body had pumped through more adrenaline than it had blood, and I was exhausted from it all. I finally was able to fall asleep and woke up around 7 a.m. When I did, I noticed that my water filter I had left out was missing. It's a gravity filter, and it hangs on a tree, filtering water down into my main bladder that I put in my backpack. And my water bladder, sitting at the base of the tree, looked like it was cut down the middle with a knife. They cut down my bear bag, which had food in it, and took some of it. The creepiest part of all of it was that they went through my bag, which was under my hammock, while I was sleeping. I checked the bear bag before I went back to sleep the second time, and it was still there, hanging, and my bag under my hammock hadn't been touched. I packed up all of my shit and hightailed it out of there, keeping my pistol close to me and moving as fast as I could. I ended up making the hike back in just under 15 hours. I hiked the trail park in the night because I wasn't about to spend another night out there. I didn't see anyone on my hike out. There were no cars parked at the trailhead, and the DNR said that they had only seen my car there. Since then, I haven't gone out there without any friends. I reported all of this to the local DNR, but they looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I am.
Number 3.
I've had some pretty messed up things happen to me in all my 20 years of living, but this is an experience that has stuck with me to this day. I was about 8 years old at the time. I lived with my mum, stepdad, and baby brother. One of my oldest brothers had come to town for the summer, as he does every year, and had brought his new PlayStation for us to play while he visited. We were all pretty big gamers, so we took over the guest bedroom for the summer during his stay. As he normally does, he went to go spend a few nights with our cousin, so he left his system there for me to play. The night prior to this event, I had slept in the guest room because I'd fallen asleep playing a video game. I woke up, and as soon as I did, I heard my mum yell for me. "Nikki, come here." I was dazed from just waking up, and I stretched and looked at the clock. It was about 2 in the afternoon. My mum and I were heading a few hours away to shop and go out to eat together, so I assumed that she was screaming at me to come get ready. As soon as my feet hit the floor, she called again, and I told her to hang on. Our dogs were going ballistic outside, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. One thing I want you to keep in mind before I continue is that my dad and little brother left to go fishing early that morning, so the only people that were there in the house were myself and my mum. Of course, I found nothing when I stepped outside, but as soon as I shut the door behind me, I heard her again. She was a little more stern this time, so I began to hurry back to her room. However, I stopped short after a few steps when I looked back into the hall to see that there were no lights on in my mum's room. This must have made my mum mad, because shortly after I quit walking, she yelled for me again. I began to feel a little uneasy, but took a few small steps forward, my eyes never leaving the pitch blackness of the hall or her room. "Mama, are you okay? Is the light blown?" I called out right before I began to turn into her hall. Now, we are from the south and we have a sweet southern drawl, but any sign of sweetness left my mother's voice. "Nikki, come here now. I want to show you something." I was a little scared. Something just didn't feel right, but I wanted to make sure that my mum was okay. At this point, my mum had repeated herself several more times, each time her sentence getting angrier and full of malice. Right as I was about to step into the pitch black that was her bedroom, I felt something grab my shoulder from behind, and in my ear I heard an unfamiliar but peaceful voice. "Stop, don't turn around, go quickly and run." I didn't hesitate and began to back up as fast as possible. All the while, whatever the hell was in her room was screaming for me in a demonic tone to come back. The screaming continued all the way back to the front part of the house, always right in my ears. I was holding my head as I backed out of the house out of fear for going deaf from all of the screaming. As soon as I got to the front door, I turned and slammed the door behind me, and the screaming stopped. I took a breath and took off flying. I jumped off our porch and ran down the road to my grandparents' house, sobbing the entire way. When I got there, I learned that my mum got called into work and wouldn't be home until after 7. I waited and watched for my mum to come home and didn't leave my grandparents until after she had come home. I told her about what had happened and she just hugged me. She told me that she had had things, like we all had, happen to her in the house, but nothing of this caliber. My dad still lives there, and I'm always afraid to go and visit and go to that part of the house when I go. Luckily for him, nothing's ever bothered him. I sure hope it stays that way.
Number 2.
Okay, here it goes. My closest friend suggested I write this as a cautionary tale and to help me further cope with what had happened. I'm female and 25 years old now. Last year, I had just moved into a new neighborhood almost an hour away from where I used to live. The house my boyfriend, Andrew, and I were renting was in the middle of a cul-de-sac facing the road. It's a beautiful, quiet area with gorgeous mountains and trails just a few blocks away. I loved it there. The area I lived in before was significantly more urban. I lived alone in a loft pretty much in the middle of downtown. Of course, it was great because everything was within walking distance. and I could take the train to work and visit great little local coffee shops or restaurants. I enjoyed it, but was very happy to move for several reasons. I was paying just a little less than I do now for very little space, and I was craving the quiet of a more suburban setting. But a greater reason for relief was because I'd had several horrible, more than creepy encounters. I had never been a paranoid person. I was naive and never thought I'd have a reason to worry. The area was well lit and I saw the police pretty consistently. But then it all started. One night, I was particularly unnerved. I was walking my dog like I always did, but I felt fear suddenly. Like when you're alone in the dark in your house and you run to your room for no good reason but the simple feeling of fear. So I took a shortcut through some building. It was stupid. It was a short but dark little alleyway full of trash bins and back doors, but it would get me home at least 5 minutes faster. I have a Labrador retriever, and as we'll all know, in general, all dogs are very aware of their surroundings and can pick up on just about everything. Halfway down the alleyway, she kept slowing down and looking back. I started to get really scared. I had to yank on her harness and whisper, "Let's go," several times. I've never seen her be aggressive with strangers or even weird sounds, but she was quietly growling and I could see the hair on her back standing. When I was reaching the end of the alleyway, I looked back and saw a man in the shadows with what seemed like a rope wrapped around his hand. After I turned the corner, I ran. When I made it inside my apartment, I turned off all the lights and looked out the window. I was on the top floor of a 2-story building. I saw the man walk up to the doors, but I lost sight of him once he was up the steps. He buzzed my apartment. I stood there for a while, thinking it'd be best to not try to speak to him. He yelled out,
"I found your wallet. You dropped it. Can I come give it to you?"
I thought to myself, is this guy for fucking real? I never carried a purse or wallet when I went out to walk my dog. I always put my ID and a CC in the zipper pocket of my workout jacket since I jogged throughout our walks. This piece of shit was probably trying to rob me. I saw him leave but was never able to get a good look at his face. A few days later, I was on the train coming back from a late shift at work. I take the last train of the night. It was 11 p.m. and 2 stops before mine. A man came inside and sat right behind me, which was strange, seeing as there were literally at least 24 open seats, but he seemed distracted by his phone, so I thought nothing more of it. When I got home, however, I panicked. I was putting my hair back to wash my face before bed, when I felt a huge chunk of my long hair was missing from the middle. Someone had made a blunt cut straight across, about 5 inches up. That morning, I had simply brushed my hair and kept it down, so I hadn't had a chance to notice anything. I called Andrew and asked if he'd done it as a prank, even though I knew I was asking in vain. It had to have been the man on the train, and I wish I'd gotten a better look at him, again. The feeling of being watched persisted for weeks. I'd hear footsteps behind me, get my door buzzed in the middle of the night, etc. So I stopped walking at night and eventually altogether. Instead, I'd drive down to a park a few miles out. But things only got worse. One night I found a package outside my door. Inside was a letter labelled, "All for you." I opened it happily, thinking it was a gift from Andrew. I was dead wrong though. It was a used condom. I instantly called the police. They told me that it was most likely a prank and there was nothing that they could do. I felt helpless. The nerves got out of hand. I was nervous all the time. Andrew worried too, so he never left me alone. He stopped sleeping at his place, even though he continued to pay his rent. So the second my lease ended, I bailed. He ended his lease and we moved in together. So now fast forward about a month and a half, give or take. We have a yard now, so I only take my dog on walks when I'm off of work and it's morning or afternoon. I go to the trails in the mountains, usually with Andrew, but if not, I travel with my phone fully charged. The trails are right by the neighbourhood, so I get a signal, although sometimes weak. I had bought some pepper spray that I carried clipped to my backpack. I had started to feel safe again and chalked up everything that had happened to just some crazy dipshit in the neighborhood. Again, I was dead wrong. It had been raining all night, but the afternoon was just a little overcast. I love the smell of rain, so I hit the trails alone with my dog. We were about an hour in and I heard someone approaching us across a bend. This was a hotspot for rock climbers, so I was used to coming across them, or runners, or other people walking their dogs. My dog was a few yards past me, but she always stays relatively close. She started running toward me, which she always did playfully, or when she wanted some water. I smiled and called to her, reaching out to pet her when she reached me. I kneeled down, but she ran past me. I turned around to make sure that she wasn't going to bother anyone. She's still young and has a bad habit of jumping on strangers and violently licking them. She was standing in front of a tall man wearing the kind of clothes you wouldn't expect someone to wear while hiking, jeans and a dark long-sleeve shirt. He was white, male, around 6'6", incredibly average looking. Only his height stood out to me. Instantly, I felt strange. My dog was just looking up at him, standing straight. He looked at me as I approached him. "Sorry," I said for no reason and pulled her toward me. I smiled at him and turned away. "Have a good one," I said as we walked away. I was having a hard time getting my dog to turn and keep walking.
Didn't you like my gift, you cunt?
I froze. I felt the cold shiver of terror crawl up my entire body. I thought to myself, I can run up toward the mountain. Dumb, it goes on for miles and miles. Or I could try to get past him and run home. Also dumb, I'm 5'7", 125 pounds, and I've never fought anyone in my life. Before I could decide, he was approaching me. I let go of my dog, who was now standing still again and growling. I turned to him and reached behind me for my pepper spray. As I unclipped it, he lunged at me. I fell to the ground, hard, with my arm still behind me. I felt it bend at the shoulder, a way it shouldn't. With a forearm pressed across my chest and his right hand over my mouth, holding my chin closed tight with his thumb, I squirmed and pushed myself to get free, but he was too heavy. My dog was running around us, barking and crying in a high-pitched tone I'd never heard before. I started praying someone would hear us. I saw her bite at his back and nip at his head, but he didn't even flinch. She ran up and down the trail, barking louder than before. She was so confused. It's amazing how fear like this turns your entire body to survival mode when you manage to get past the panic. For several moments, I thought the weight of him on top of me would break my ribs. I couldn't breathe. After the initial shock, I realized that my left arm was free. I felt a stinging pain on my right shoulder. It's broken. It's broken. I kept thinking to myself. He was kissing my face and smelling my hair and saying things under his breath I couldn't understand. I could feel his penis pressing against my leg.
Be a good girl for me, okay, baby? Okay?
I told myself to calm down. I begged myself to just calm down and think. I stopped fighting. I patted around for a rock with my left hand. He softened his grip on my chest and moved his hand from my mouth, so I stopped moving my arm, hoping he wouldn't notice it was free.
You want it so bad, don't you, baby?
He reached down to my shorts, sliding his hand up my leg and grabbing my hip tight. He buried his head into my neck, licking me and groaning. This was my shot. I grabbed a rock about the size of my palm, not very large, but it felt sharp and I needed to act quickly. I hit the rock against the back of his head, simultaneously rolling as he slid to my side. I rolled on my injured shoulder and crawled on the dirt and rocks as fast as possible. He screamed and pressed his hands on the back of his head. I ran faster than I knew I could. I didn't look back. I could hear my dog still barking and I heard another scream. As I ran, I could hear my dog catching up to me. I was afraid to slow down to reach into my backpack for my phone, so I just ran, and I didn't stop. It took me what seemed like an eternity to run back to the start of the trail. My dog was with me. When I looked down, I saw blood on her nose, mouth, and neck. I feared that she was injured. When I approached my parked car, I saw a man getting out of his. "Please, call the police!" I screamed at him. "Please!" He looked terrified and reached into his pocket. When he looked down at my dog, he fell silent for a moment and looked at me. I grabbed her to check her for wounds. She was perfectly fine. When the police got there, they found him about 2 miles in, sitting in blood. My dog had torn into his calf, most likely preventing him from running after me. He was arrested and charged. They found his car near my home. He'd been stalking me that whole time. He is now serving a 16-month sentence. His little gift hadn't been taken into evidence, so they couldn't prove the stalking. In the end, I feel thankful for my dog, and just pure lucky I was able to act to fight for my life. No one should ever have to go through something like this. We know that there are sick people out there, but we never think that we will be unlucky enough to come across one. For months, I couldn't sleep. I had torn tissue around my shoulder, so work was hard. I hated being alone, but didn't know how to behave around people. I was only ever content when I could just cuddle up with my dog and sleep or watch reruns of my favorite shows and movies. Slowly though, things got better and I changed my perspective. I felt proud of myself for fighting instead of beating myself up about what I could have done to prevent this or what I'd done to deserve it. I reminded myself how lucky I was that I hadn't been raped. I sleep better now and I've started running again. After surgery and a bit of rehab, my shoulder is doing better. Fear only creeps in when I think about what will happen when he's released. I like to imagine he'll let go of whatever fixation he had, but part of me knows better. I'm in the process of moving from the home I loved so dearly. I've decided to get my master's in English. I always thought that I'd stop with my bachelor's, so I'm moving to a different state for school. Andrew also found a job and is coming with me. He helped me through everything and was understanding the entire time. I'm moving forward with my life, not running away. The best thing we can do for ourselves when someone comes into our lives and takes something away from us, whether it's our sense of security, our happiness, any piece of us, is to fight and never let them break your spirit or your soul. Never let anyone or anything define you. Fight with all you have. Thanks for listening.
Number 1.
I'm a petite 24-year-old female from the mainland of the US, but this story takes place when I was 19 and living in Oahu, Hawaii. Now, the area I lived in was really ghetto, and being half white, half Gourmanian, but light-skinned, I was the closest thing to a white person in the entire city I lived in. Whenever I told locals where I lived, they'd give me a funny look like I was crazy or lying. This is relevant, I promise. So because where I lived had absolutely no jobs and I was living with my cousins who were all carless, I had to take 2 buses for an hour to work, both ways. The day this happened, I was covering for a co-worker who had a family emergency and it was a Sunday. I'd never worked a Sunday before and this shift was also 2 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. No big deal, there's a bus stop right next to my work and they run until midnight, right? Wrong, buses stop running at 10 p.m. on Sundays. So here I am, standing at a bus stop alone for about 40 minutes. Businesses all around me are closing, it's getting darker and darker, and I'm starting to panic. I'm completely alone, save for the occasional hooker and John, wandering around looking for dark alleys and crystal meth. Hawaii is fucking scary at night. Don't believe the paradise hype outside of Waikiki and North Shore. All of a sudden, some homeless, toothless meth head pops out of nowhere and says,
Hey, haole.
bad word for white person.
The bus no run this late. You fucked. Start walking your skinny ass home.
I realized how fucked I am. My neighborhood is seriously dangerous, so even if I did manage to walk home safely, there's no way I'm walking through Calm Park at night alone. It just isn't happening. I open my purse and check my wallet, and find out that one of my cousins has indeed borrowed my last $50, but was nice enough to leave me with enough for the bus that isn't coming, meaning I can't even call a cab. Oh, and to top it all off, my phone is dead, because there was some big shot GM at my work today, so I wasn't allowed to charge it at my cashier station, and didn't trust it alone in the break room. As I'm internally having a fucking breakdown, a taxi cab pulls up right in front of me, windows down. "Sorry dude, I'd love a ride but I don't have any cash," I tell the taxi driver. He looks at me, looks around, and sighs.
Well, where do you need to go? I can't leave you here now that I know that. I'll end up seeing you on the 5 o'clock news or something.
I tell him my neighborhood and he does a double take, then shrugs and motions for me to get in the back. I'm so happy, I ignore the foreboding feeling I have in the back of my mind. I've only been living here for 2 months and my luck has been so shitty that I'm just like, yes, my luck is changing. Nah, I was wrong. I hop into the back seat, give him my cross streets kind of near my house and tell him that I'll get his number and pay him later. Thank God I couldn't remember my address. Everything is normal for the first 20 minutes of the ride. Then he starts asking me really weird questions.
How old are you? Are you a virgin? Are you married? Do you carry a gun in that big purse?
I lie and tell him yes on the gun, starting to feel creeped out. He stops talking after that for a bit, until he notices that he's almost out of gas. I look and he's really almost out. So we pull up to a gas station, but instead of parking next to a pump, he parks behind the building, near a dumpster, and says,
"I'm going to pay for the gas and have a snack, then I'll take you back."
I start to say something about needing to get home and he cuts me off.
"You're riding for free, let me eat my fucking snack."
I'm like, whoa, okay, and consider bolting when he comes back. But I have no idea where we are or how to get home. So instead, when he leaves, I reach into the front and unlock all the doors, just in case. It was an older model car, so I knew that they'd stay unlocked unless he manually locked them again. He comes back, empty-handed, no snack. Fuck, am I the snack? He gets in the front seat, opens the middle console and pulls out a fucking meth pipe, a baggie of meth, a weed pipe, some weed and a lighter.
"Let me have my snack, then we can go."
He packs the meth pipe, takes a few hits and blows it at me. Then he starts passing it to me. "I'm good for right now, thanks." He looks pissed but puts it down and grabs the weed pipe and repeats the process. I'm like 2 seconds from bolting when he throws the car in reverse and leaves, without pumping any gas, now holding the meth pipe again, taking occasional hits. I'm freaking out. This dude is driving like 70 miles per hour in a 30 lane, high as a fucking kite. But the scenery starts to look familiar. I realize we're like 5 minutes from my house. I look over. Doors are still unlocked. Gotta think fast. His hand is slowly reaching for my knee, and he's looking right at me, not at the road, and he's moaning like my thigh is giving him the world's best orgasm.
"We're going to have fun tonight, baby. I'll teach you how to take a dick."
I tell him I'm not interested, and he just laughs.
"Your phone is dead. Who are you gonna call, Ghostbusters? We're in Kalihi, girl."
His hand is on my leg and he takes a left, away from the street I live on. I realize how fucked I am, but I'm oddly calm. I change tactics. Problem is, if I don't check in, they'll come looking for me. I'm down to party, but I gotta check in first. I'm a little white girl. If I don't come home, they'll go check my work, and my co-workers saw me leave with you. I don't want you to get in trouble. You know how white people are. I'm counting on the fact that he doesn't know my family isn't white. I'm counting on the fact that he's high enough not to know I'm lying. And I'm counting on the fact that he didn't see that all my co-workers were gone. He gives me a weird look, then hands me the meth pipe.
"Okay, girl, let's party."
I hold the pipe up to my lips, waiting for him to look towards the road and emulate what I saw him doing, turning it side to side while lighting it. I produce a tiny bit of smoke, don't inhale, and immediately blow it out, hoping to God I don't get fucking high and I never have to explain why there is meth in my system if I do.
"You're fucking burning it."
He gets pissed and grabs the cool end of the pipe from me.
"Wasting my fucking dinner. I'll show you how to do it right."
He takes a hard right and I realize he's headed for the cross streets I told him about. My vision is a little fucked. Everything seems too bright and my adrenaline starts to feel almost euphoric. Fuck, am I high? Fuck. The street I live on is wrapped around a hill, easily a mile wide, and the cross streets are about a quarter mile from my house. As we get close to the streets, he slows down, asking me what house it is. I lie and say I can't tell. Can he slow down? It's so dark and I just moved there, and all of the houses look the same and I'm high. Please slow down. He obliges and slows down to about 5 miles an hour, and I make a break for it, swinging the door open and jumping out of the still moving car. I feel like I'm fucking flying as I hit the dirt of the sidewalk until I get to my feet. Then I break out into a run. I probably looked like a fucking lunatic, arms flailing, but I did not give a fuck, nor did I bother looking back. The eldest cousin I lived with was 39, male, and built like a fucking Samoan. If I could just get to my house, everything would be okay. That was all I could think. Plus, because he had turned, we had actually passed my house, so he would have to drive to the next driveway and turn around because it was a narrow road. Plus, he was at the bottom of the hill, so he wouldn't be able to see which house I was in. I didn't see headlights, so I figured that was a good sign. Finally, I ran into my front yard, unlocked the front door, relocked it and slid down to the floor, a shaking, crying mess. I went to the front window and peeked out. No one on the street, no cabbie, nothing. I was safe, I thought. I ended up not telling anyone about what had happened, because I always got the same lecture when something bad happened to me. You were acting like some stupid little college white girl. If you were smarter, and yada yada yada. But everything seemed okay. I started working day shifts only, avoided being alone or ever at that bus stop. Life went on. About a week later, I noticed a black car with tinted windows parked a few houses down from my own house. I figured that it was a neighbor's friend and brushed it off. Only it was there the next day too, and the next. I finally asked one of my cousin's sons, who is about 17 years old, if he'd seen it. He said that it showed up around 6 every day, which is exactly when I would get home from work. I started freaking out. Finally, I broke down and told my giant cousin what had happened. Of course, leaving out the meth part. Surprisingly, he didn't lecture me. He felt bad that I couldn't come to him for support and apologized for riding me so hard about being from the mainland. And he said that he'd deal with the black car. The next day, my cousin's son picked me up from the bus stop near the house on his moped. We noticed the black car following us, but acted like we didn't. We pulled up to the house, and as soon as the black car parked, out came my Samoan-built, muscle-bound cousin with a metal baseball bat, taking practice swings as he approached the car. It reversed halfway down the street, hit a fence, jumped a curb, turned around in a front yard, and was never seen again.